Hey, welcome everybody. This is John Paul Dutch Speed Sign. This is the Raging Verbalist number 237 for those who are keeping track. Well, you can see us every Friday on YouTube and also on the Facebook group Position to Win Book, Position to Win Book. Talk about a lot of different things that kind of irritate me or pop up, and we go through them, kind of stay a little bit away from politics, but sometimes we drift into that. So check us out. Hit a subscribe, please, and a thumbs up helps out with the algorithms and all of the rest of that. Of course, joining me as always is the ever lovely Sandra, because she will be plying me with the questions that if you were here and you had thought through this topic, you would be asking me these questions. Hello, Sandra.
Hello, how are you doing?
Doing good. It's kind of a sad topic we're talking about today. It really is. It's mournful and never easy when this kind of thing happens. So
That's right. So let's dive in. So we're talking about the Mirage. So is it true that the Mirage will close forever on July 17th, 2024?
5 days away from now, it is scheduled that the Mirage Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas will close its doors forever. And that seems to be the case. They were bought out, of course, originally started out as a Steve Wynn vision of what he wanted to do, and we'll get into more of that. But it, fell into different hands, and now, well, they're gonna close it down. It's time, they say, to move on from the Mirage.
And what about the 1.6 million that has to be distributed before it can close?
Ironically, there are these progressive slots. There are people who are owed money, and under Nevada gaming laws, they have to pay out $1.6 million before it wraps up. Some of you may already be listening to this in the car and start aiming your car towards Las Vegas and saying, maybe I can go catch some of that money. But yes, they have to, before they can actually shut it down, they've got to make sure that they distribute that last bit of money and wrap it up.
And so from your Vegas days, what was at the location of the Mirage?
Well, in the 1970s, Vegas it was kind of interesting because there were parts of the strip that were empty. There was just hunks of desert. And the Mirage, where the Mirage sits, used to be a place called the Castaways, and it was a sharp contrast to the Caesar's Palace that was sitting next to it. Now, Caesar's did not look like it does today. In fact, there was a big giant fountain in front, made famous by Evel Knievel attempting to jump it in a motorcycle and crashing and breaking a zillion bones and everything. But it was kind of a dumpy place, and it had opened up, I think, in the late 1950s, and had been there. Didn't even start as a Castaway. It started out, I think it was called the San Souci or something. But come on, it's Vegas. Make it easy to pronounce, make it easy to understand. So yeah, it was there for a very long time, but it was a sharp contrast, if you will. So it was, probably time for that to get done and wrapped up.
And what was the significance in the 1980s of building the Mirage?
Well, the story is fascinating because Steve Wynn, who had successfully taken over the Golden Nugget downtown, and downtown, for those of you who have not been to Las Vegas or haven't spent a lot of time in Vegas, is that actually everything from Sahara, the street, not the casino, south, all of that is county land. It's Clark County. It's not Las Vegas proper city. So there was a distinct difference between having downtown casinos and having strip casinos, because the strip is where the real action, the high rollers, the money, all of that was there. All of the big hotels were built out on the strip. So Steve Wynn ended up having the Golden Nugget downtown, and he had redone that because it was not really that great a place, but he redid it. And in fact, he even had Frank Sinatra, come in and do a commercial. I mean, I don't even know if Frank, well, I'm sure Frank knew where downtown was, but Frank used to live at Caesar's Palace. They built a multi-story, not even a bungalow. It was an amazing place that had a rooftop, where he could sit there and kind of watch the days go by, kind of thing. So what happened is that Steve Wynn really wanted to get out of the minor leagues, if you will, and get to the major leagues, and went out and said, I'm going to go figure out how to do this. There's a very intriguing but much longer story than we get into today about how he ends up buying and securing the rights to the Castaways, and turns that into eventually where the Mirage goes. So they ended up, tearing down the Castaway and putting that in. The biggest significance, the milestone, was that it had been 16 years. So some people who are never experienced that 16 years where they hadn't really built a real resort or anything on the strip. And he broke that dam open by putting that in place.
And what did it cost to build the Mirage?
Well, when he built it in the 1980s, it was an unheard of, insane amount of money. People wondered how he was ever going to make any dough at it at all. So ended up costing $630 million. It would have cost more than that if he was able to squeeze a little bit of money back out of his investors and bankers and everything. But he was under the gun to get the thing open. So it's like, well, that's the official cost of $630 million. He worked really hard to get it open and get it started. In fact, there's an interesting story about when it launched and when it started. That first week was phenomenally successful. In fact, so successful that they had to come up with a way to count the money. And for many of you, it always looks like there's lots and lots of money inside of a casino. There is a very successful casino. But what has to happen is that in Vegas, every chip that is out there has to be redeemable in currency, hard cash. Different, by the way, in other countries. If you ever go and play other places or other venues, you may be surprised when they say, well, can we give you a check? I mean, like, no, I don't want a check, I want cash. So they had this problem, which is they couldn't move the money fast enough, because what happens is people would go and sit like at a blackjack table, they throw $500 down and say change. That goes into the box and you get chips and you play. Well, some point in time, they have to take those boxes from each table, and they do this on a regular basis, take it to the counting room, do the accounting. So table, 11, we'll call, had so much money in it, and, all this has to happen before that money can be returned to the casino cage, if that's the appropriate place it has to be. So they were so far behind on getting this that they ended up getting, and they have money counting machines. It's an amazing operation. And they ended up building a chain link caged counting room outside in the back dock area. And it was outside. And they had guards with shotguns protecting the money as they wheeled it out, counted the money, did that rapid thing so they could, meet the speed that they needed to do. So problem that we'd all like to have, but it really was a real serious issue, and quite remarkable that they did it. And it was successful right from the get-go. And, obviously people knew that Steve had made the right decision at that point in time. Now you can make the right decision. If you go out and you pick up this book, my book, most businesses fail in the first 5 minutes. It just takes them 3 to 5 years to realize it, Position to Win. You can pick it up from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. You can get a physical copy, or you can go to positiontowinbook.com and get it. And I will also autograph it if you buy it from us directly. Also, you can get it via Kindle and Nook and Apple iBooks. And there you go on that. And then that's that book. And then the other book is Remote Work for a Better World, which is if you want to become better at doing virtual things, that's your book. That's what you should do. And while you're at it, if you go to the positiontowinbook.com website, go check out the Raging Verbalist mug so you can have a little bit of rage every morning. Everything tastes a little bit better, has a little bit bigger edge if it's in a Raging Verbalist mug. Okay, so Sandra, what are we talking about next?
All right. So what were some of the most unique things that made the Mirage stand out?
Well, I have to give Steve Wynn a lot of credit, because Steve Wynn figured out that, you can have all of these things, like a big casino, you can build this mega resort, you can do all of that, but maybe you need a little bit more. You need a little bit of showmanship. And so first off, if you go to check, you're not going to be doing it long, but if you went to check in, there was this massive fish tank behind the check-in area. I mean, usually the check-in area is a pretty boring area, but that was pretty exciting because you saw this huge aquarium, just massive fish tank. Also, he brought in Siegfried and Roy, who were tigers and trainers and all of that. There's a sad story about what happens to those guys down the road, but brought in the tigers, and that was pretty cool. Also, eventually they end up with Circus Soleil with the Beatles theme, love song. But the most important thing out front, which is without ever getting into the casino, is he built this volcano. Now, the volcano was funny because when it was built and everything, the joke was, and it kept going on and on, is that this is crazy to have a volcano in Vegas because, of course, how does one under lore satisfy a raging volcano? How do we stop a volcano from erupting and destroying? And the legend or mythology is that we toss a virgin into the volcano. And of course, the joke was, where are you going to find a virgin in Las Vegas? So that was always there, a bit of a funny thing.
And did you ever stay at the Mirage? Sorry, I find that last one funny.
I hope so. It's meant to be.
So did you ever stay there?
And you've been to Vegas, and
Yep.
people are a little wild. So
that's right. That's right. So did you ever stay at the Mirage?
Yes, we did. Yeah, my wife and I stayed at the Mirage when it opened in the late '80s, '89 when it opened up. So we went to Vegas with regularity. I mean, now Vegas is getting stranger and stranger right now. I mean, I think when they start charging $40 to park, it gets a little stupid. But anyway, so we went there, and in fact, we went to Siegfried and Roy, and it was a great show. We had fantastic seats, and they did a fabulous job. And again, there was tragedy down the road eventually, but that was that. But it was really good. And then they also had dolphins, so you could go see dolphins. I mean, we're in Vegas, and and talk about pulling out the recesses of my mind. They even had a penguin display, which we actually had to double check. Sandra, crack researcher that she is, looked it up and said, really, there were live penguins at one point in time in Vegas. I mean, hey, it's Vegas, it's crazy. So. And the other cool part about it is that when the big cats were not, doing their show, of course, big cats do what big cats do, which is hang around and sleep like regular cats. So, hey, we hung around and looked at those. So yeah, we ended up, having a lot of fun hanging out at the Mirage. Really thought it was a very cool property and what it looked like. Now I'm gonna toss in a little quick bonus information is that the Mirage and its sister property is Treasure Island. They're actually the exact same. He must have taken and gotten the architect to design both buildings identically because they are identical. They sit next to each other. I don't know the story of when Treasure Island popped up, but Treasure Island, it was the less expensive one. So when you walk through it, the carpeting was like 3 layers cheaper. When everything was done at a more economical level. But yeah, the Mirage stood out, did very nicely. And and in those days, if you walked out of the Mirage and wanted to get into Caesar's Palace, I mean, it was really tough. I mean, the two casinos battled for years, and still somebody said, hey, people are going to want to go back and forth between the casinos, and they finally solved that. I mean, it used to be a real pain in the ass, but yeah.
And what was your fondest memories of the Mirage?
I used to host sales meetings for companies and put those kinds of things together. And one of the things I always loved about Vegas at the time, probably not like today, is that you could go do something like we did at the Mirage. I really liked the Mirage buffet. Again, buffets, it's gluttony beyond belief, but they had a really, I wouldn't say it was the highest class, but it wasn't like circus, where you're like, oh my God, what is that? I wouldn't eat that at home. If somebody, brought that to the picnic, we'd go, yeah, well, go and invite them back to bring those kind of dishes. So it had a really nice buffet and I liked it a lot. And I said to my client, hey, let's take everybody, about 125 people. Let's take them to the buffet at the Mirage, because let me tell you, getting seating for 125 people anywhere is a pain in the neck. I mean, try to keep these clowns and kittens and all these organized. It's crazy. So we walk up to the buffet and I said, she goes, well, how many in your party? And I said, 125. She goes, 125. She goes, how are you going to pay for it? And I pulled out the credit card, the Amex corporate card that my client had issued to me, and I handed it to her. And she goes, 125 times, hits the number, and it pops up this, whatever the hell that number was. I mean, it was like, $28, 725 plus tax. Vegas was always a lot of tax on it. And she just swiped the card, bang, done. And my client looked at me and goes, what? I said, well, welcome to Vegas. And they moved us to part of an area, and they said, well, this will easily accommodate you. It's really designed for 250 people, but we've got you all set up. And to me, that was great, because that was customer service that was beyond belief, and it was so easy and so well put together. By the way, they ended updating it and fixing it, and it went to shit. So it sucked from later on. I mean, boo hoo. So that was one of my fondest memories. The other one was kind of a tough one, which is my wife had jewelry, and of course she hid it somewhere in the room, and she thought that somebody had stolen it. And their security team was amazingly good. And well, we ended up finding it because she hid it under. Don't even ask why people hide this stuff in the room, but they did. And but of course we were racing around. But we found it. That's good news. And they were very nice, very understanding, and they were absolutely great.
And what do you think about the idea of the Hard Rock being built on the same site, and will it be successful?
So it's interesting because the Hard Rock properties, and there was a Hard Rock casino off strip, and that's a big deal. I mean, location. If you're away from the strip, if you're not quite on the strip, you got some tough sledding to do, because people want to be on the strip. So through a variety of different mergers and purges and all of that, they end up getting this thing. And they decide, hey, we want to go out and build I don't know how many stories high electric guitar, and we want to do that. I don't know if that themed idea really makes sense. I don't know, but we'll see. But since they're taking out the volcano, since the long gone are the cats and the penguins and the dolphins and all of that, it's going to be interesting to see. So what's the lure? What's the attraction? What's going to happen? What's their demographic they're trying to pull in? So I would say it's a 50-50 type of deal. Depends on who they're trying to go for. Now, if you stick around and you think about back to, we go back to what Caesars has become, which is a mega property with lots of different things. And I've stayed at Caesars a lot more than I stayed at the Mirage. Caesars is kind of has this flavor to it. Well, we'll have to see when the Hard Rock opens and whether or not their theme works. I've only been in the Hard Rock Casino in Vegas one time, walked in, spent a little bit of time, was not impressed. But again, I might not be the demographic for what they are doing. So we'll see if that really connects. Right now, Vegas is going through a pretty interesting time, and we'll see if the trend continues or not.
And what are the lessons that entrepreneurs, sales, and marketing people can learn from this life cycle that the Mirage has gone through?
Well, I think there's lots of lessons, but let's touch on a few. First and foremost is Steve Wynn had a great vision about what was going to happen and what could take place by building this property as this mega property, thousands of rooms, had like 3,000 rooms, which, by the way, is not the largest in Vegas. That's the MGM Grand at Tropicana and Las Vegas Boulevard that had like 5,500 rooms, because Kirk Kerkorian wanted to show that he had the biggest, you guys fill in the blank of what he thought he'd have the biggest of. And, it was a great idea. And though Steve could not hang on to the property because he, like so many others in Vegas, got over leveraged and then ended up losing the property, and then it kept dropping through different hands. I think the lesson that we can all learn from watching this is that you can have the hottest and coolest idea, but you have to ask yourself, is this just a trend? Is this going to last for a long time? Vegas is a personification that things come and go, that the desert essentially subsumes everything, it appears. and that things move on. So whenever you're building your business, whenever you're building whatever you're doing, always ask yourself the question, where are we in regards to how the market is progressing, how things are taking place, because we're always on the clock. And that clock is ticking no matter if you acknowledge it or not. And the real key, and maybe this is where the folks who bought it and ended up with it and saw the numbers, because they know the numbers, I don't know the numbers, is that was the Mirage relevant given the current state of Las Vegas? They clearly made a decision it wasn't and went through the effort of doing that. The lesson is that we all must stay relevant in markets, because if we don't stay relevant, we'll end up like so many others, especially in Vegas, have ended up where you're no longer part of the party. You're part of the past. And with that, I want to thank, of course, the ever lovely Sandra and all of you for coming and joining us on the Raging Verbalist every week. This has been the Raging Verbalist number 237. Until next time, have a great one. And maybe we'll talk about your next topic. By the way, if you want to send us a topic or two, that would be cool too. I'll see if I can rage about it or not. And with that, have a great one.